In my last Thursday Thought, I spoke about the power of stories, and there can be few stories with more fascinating insights than the Christmas story. Over the last 2 weeks, Brian and Alexander's insights have fascinated me, and there is, I think, a limitless number of gems to be mined in that wonderful Christmas story, which is just as well for those of us who have to preach fresh sermons on it every year. And the thought that struck me this year is the significance of small beginnings. Taking the story at face value, why would God begin his rescue plan for a broken old world with a baby? A baby is completely helpless, totally dependent on us. And perhaps its biggest handicap as would-be saviour of the world is that a baby is only one individual. Our instinct, given unlimited power, would be to do something mighty to bring about wholesale change in the world, some master plan to sort everything out and not take the risk that anyone else might mess it up by doing their own thing. And for many people, of course, the fact that God doesn't do that is pretty convincing evidence that he doesn't exist. And I have to admit there's a certain logic to that. But there's also, I think, a deep wisdom in the idea of starting small. The more I think about it, the more breathtakingly wonderful it is to start with one helpless baby. And if we think about it, humanity has tried the big master plan over and over again, particularly in the 20th century. Communism, fascism, socialism, Thatcherism, so many other isms, they all sprung from our belief that we had the power to solve every problem if only we could get the master plan right. And even at local level, we saw newfangled schemes for housing, town planning and education. And history is now littered with master plans that failed, that let us down quite badly, and in some cases started devastating wars. And consequently, these days, we're pretty sceptical about master plans. But by contrast, there are many examples of how starting small has produced miracles. Richard Branson famously started his business empire with only £300 using a local church and a telephone box. Charles Dunstan started the Carphone warehouse with a single box of mobile phones which he sold from his bedsit. John Dunning began with a soggy field and a brilliant idea. George Frederick Handel began by messing around on a dusty clavichord in his father's attic. And indeed, the whole human race started with just one woman who migrated out of Africa some 150,000 years ago. We see the significance of small beginnings reflected also in our wisdom writings. The fabler Aesop famously said, "No act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted." And an old Chinese proverb, oft quoted on motivational posters, reminds us that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Wisdom inherited from Christianity in the West has always insisted on the sanctity of each individual life and sees the answers to the world's problems not in grand schemes, but in each individual heart being set right and living the right way. Now, whatever you think about Christianity or God, you have to admit the Christian world has come a very long way from the days of tribal warfare and gladiatorial combat and animal and even human sacrifice, all thanks to one small baby born completely unnoticed in a remote stable. So my thought for today on the Christmas story is not to underestimate the power and significance of small beginnings. We can feel so helpless when we look at the problems in the world. Take, for example, the local floods, let alone all the other problems we see on the news. But Christmas reminds us that we can change the world. We just have to start small. I think the most significant events in this world start not with grand schemes, but by individuals treating other individuals with kindness and generosity, or by us taking the initiative to change our little corner of the world for the better. Today, you will have a chance to put a smile on the face of some weary motorway traveller, or for a moment to distract the attention of some small child that's driving their parents mad, or to help someone find a much worried about Christmas present, or maybe to help someone who might not have felt a moment's relief since they were flooded out last week. So many opportunities. These small beginnings might just turn someone's day around, maybe even their whole life. After all, no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted, and even God began with nothing more than a helpless baby. Happy Christmas.